but those who are interested will know what I mean. The meeting is also web streamed, and that is for the technicals. So this conference will be an annual event of the Willy Brandt program, which the S&D Group relaunched last year to promote EU enlargement and to enhance cooperation with our progressive sister parties in the candidate countries ahead of their EU accession. And today we are bringing together young leaders from the candidate countries and our MEPs, who are mostly sitting here in front. Because the S&D Group is committed to walking this path together with our partners. Every step of the way, we will hear about the needs of our partners and how we can, the S&D Group, provide practical support ahead of the accession process with a particular emphasis on the new generation. Because we know enlargement is not decided in Brussels alone. It's built on the ground in the candidate countries by people and by parties who we are about to hear from also today. And similarly to last year's conference, we are organizing this jointly with FEPS, Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, and the other foundations. And the event will continue tomorrow with the second day on their lead of the foundations outside the European Parliament. That's it for my introduction. Now it's my privilege and honor to give the first speaker the floor, and it's our group president, Iratxe García Pérez.
Thank you, Thijs, and first of all, thank you all of you for to be here with us today. It's really important for our political family. It's really important for our group to lead the enlargement process, always take into account a different perspective and all different voices. And organize today this event, listening young generation, it's essential if we want to build together the future of the European Union and the future of our different countries. I will continue in Spanish, and I imagine that maybe some of you will need a translation. Queridas amigas, queridos amigos.
Dear friends, there are times in history in which a generation stands in front of a door. And that is a door that it hasn't itself built, but that generation nonetheless has the responsibility of opening that door, separating fear from courage, fragmentation from unity, resignation to looking ahead to the future. And today, that door is Europe. And you are the generation called on to enter that door. EU enlargement is not a mere technical process. It's not just another type of negotiation, nor is it a timetable of reforms. Enlargement is, in essence, something deeper. It is a historic decision about who we are and where we want to go. And that's why we're here today. Please allow me, in the first, to give a very warm welcome to the High Representative, dear Kaja Kallas. Thanks for joining us here today. Thanks for your commitment to the European project, and thanks for your work at a particularly demanding time for the destiny of the EU. Your presence here once again sends a political message. Enlargement lies in Europe's future. Let me welcome to our fellow MEPs, our associations, our partners, FEPS and many others, civil society, and most importantly, welcome to you, young leaders coming from Albania, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Georgia, Kosovo, Moldova, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Serbia, Turkey and Ukraine. You have traveled from very different areas, and you've come too from complex histories, from realities that differ, but you share something essential, the conviction that your future lies with Europe and in Europe. So let me say something now with absolute clarity. Europe needs your futures too. Now, this conference is taking place for the second year in a row as part of our flagship programme, the Willy Brandt programme. And this name is no coincidence. Willy Brandt understood, before many others, that Europe would not be able to be built on the basis of walls, but on bridges. He understood that reconciliation didn't signal weakness, but bravery, that bringing together East and West was not about making concessions, but it was a historical necessity. And his legacy is not just a memory, it's a mandate. And in this uncertain geopolitical context, that mandate rings out clearer than ever, because our project, the Willy Brandt project, is a project, first and foremost, for peace in Europe, for bringing together our family, for allowing wounds to scar over when they'd been left open by history. It's about bringing to life that powerful story of a free and peaceful, united Europe. But it's not just that. It's the European dream of generations that fought for liberty, for equality, and for dignity. It is the definitive bringing in of your countries into a political space where the rule of law is not up for debate, where human rights are not just optional, where democracy is not just a hollow term, and it is, most of all, an investment in our future. In the world in which we're living today, with tension, with war, with threats to our democracy, enlargement isn't just something that we want on a whim. It's a strategic necessity. Russia's brutal war against Ukraine has underscored something that we should never have forgotten. Peace is not something to be taken for granted. It's not irreversible. Democracy is not guaranteed. And European unity is our best defence. And that's why we're saying loud and clear that moving forward with enlargement is about bolstering our security, our resilience, and our sovereignty as well. And this is a debate where the Socialists and Democrats are on the front lines. And this is out of conviction, but also out of a sense of duty. We know that enlargement must be rooted in clear principles. We cannot compromise on rule of law, on governance, on democracy. These are not mere bureaucratic requirements. They are at the heart of the European project. Our European social model must be a guarantee of shared wealth, not an empty promise. And all of the candidate countries must be treated on an equal footing. There can't be shortcuts for some or unjustified obstacles for others. This is the way forward. And it is a demanding path, but it's a fair one as well, because enlargement is a process rooted on merit. It requires deep reforms to the economy, the fight against corruption, strengthening institutions. But if I may, I would like to be just as clear on this point. This process is not something that's decided on only in Brussels. It's built on the ground, in your cities, in your universities, in your institutions, and in your civil society. And that's where you come in. This conference is dedicated to youth for one very concrete reason. You are the ones who are going to be experiencing the Europe that we are building today. We take inspiration from the students in Serbia who took to the streets to defend democracy and freedom. And their message is very clear. What they were calling for was nothing more than something their countries had already committed to on their pathway towards the European Union. They weren't calling for more Europe, they were calling for consistency. And that's certainly something we should all be paying attention to, because the future of enlargement isn't just about negotiations. It's about credibility, the credibility of our promises. And here, Europe must rise to the occasion. We know that this is not an easy path. We know that there are differences in the pace of the reforms. We know that there are some countries moving forward with more determination than others. But we also know that where there is political will, things can be achieved. Because Europe is not just an institution, it is a community of values. And that community is strengthened with each and every one of you. If you will allow, I will now say a few words about each of your countries. Albania, that energy, that ability to transform. Bosnia and Herzegovina, where living together is still a day-to-day and bold task. Georgia, at the crossroads between continents, with its eyes placed firmly on Europe. Kosovo, with a vibrant youth that believes in a European future. Moldova, demonstrating that even in the face of adversity, one can move forward with a determination. Montenegro, small in size, but mighty in ambition for Europe. North Macedonia, an example of political bravery, overcoming historical challenges, Serbia with an active civil society demanding democracy and reform, Turkey, a bridge between worlds, with a society with its gaze still placed on Europe with hope, and Ukraine, which today embodies, like no other, the price of freedom and the meaning of belonging to Europe. Each of your countries contributes something unique to this common project, and all of you are needed. And that's why our group wants to go further. We want to strengthen our political networks, our cooperation. We want to offer observer status to our fellow parties, our brother parties, even before the formal accession. And we want to prepare to make sure that everything is ready for when you'll be joining us here in this parliament, because we know that that day will come. And when you are here, we want you to be ready. We want you to be strong, and we want you to play a leadership role. The former enlargements were a success. They transformed economies, they consolidated democracies, and they brought societies closer together. And now it's up to us. We've got to write the next chapter. But there's something that we must not forget. Enlargement is not just about institutions, it's about people. And that's why we must place people at the heart of our debate. Dear friends, let's go back to the start. I talked about a door, and that door is still there. It's not always easy to open that door. It requires effort, bravery, determination, but something more as well. It requires hope. That same hope that inspired Willy Brandt. The same hope that led millions of Europeans to believe in a shared future. The same hope that today I can read on your faces. Europe simply won't be whole without you, and you are not alone on this journey. So let's open this door together, and together let's build this Europe which we are yet to come to. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, querida Iratxe. Thank you very much for that great kickoff, I think, for a very fruitful, lively conference today. And we already saw her joining us, dear High Representative Vice President Kaja Kallas. It's a great honor for us all to have you here with us today. And I know that enlargement, although there's another commissioner for enlargement, but I know it's close to your heart as well. And I think that, especially in these geopolitical challenging times, we all know that one way or the other, we have to make our bloc, our European family, stronger. And I hope that we will hear from you what your passion, your vision is on this topic. And then after that, we will have a bit of time for a Q&A with you, where will give preference to the young people sitting in the second row. So prepare your questions for our High Representative Kaja Kallas. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, dear friends, young Europeans. Thank you for having me here. It's really a great pleasure to be here. Every time I travel around the world, and believe me, I travel a lot, then I get to also, take the time to engage with young people. And I do this because I really value the chance to speak with the generation that actually will live with the consequences of the decisions that we are making today. And I just came back from Morocco, where I met a group of 50 students from all over Africa, and they were really interested in what Europe's next moves will be, from our investments to green energy, but also, stepping up educational exchanges. They understood that also European choices, or Europe's choices, matter to them. So make no mistake, we are living through a moment where choices really count. Choices about power, choices about security, choices about what kind of Europe we want, but also choices about what kind of world we want. What we want and what we will have in 10 years depends on the choices we make right now, which brings me to today's topic, which is enlargement. Just a few weeks ago, on 10th of March, the European Parliament held a major debate on the European Union's enlargement strategy, and it was not the routine discussion. It reflected the simple truth. Enlargement is back at the center of Europe's geopolitical agenda. But it also reminded us that the enlargement is not only something we do for others, it is something that we do for ourselves. In fact, enlargement has always been a geopolitical choice, one that strengthens the European Union as much as those who want to join. Most EU member states had to overcome authoritarianism to join this union. This is the story of Germany, Italy, Austria, which rebuilt democracy after the darkest chapters of the 20th century. It is the story of Greece, Portugal, and Spain, who joined in 1980s, anchoring their young democracies in a community that protected them from sliding back to authoritarianism. It is also the stories of countries from Central and Eastern and Southeastern Europe who joined in 2004, 2007, and 2014 after freeing themselves from the Soviet domination and the shackles of Yugoslavia. Enlargement helped lock in their choices. It made Europe safer, stronger, and more stable by extending the area of peace and democracy deep into the continent, but also removing gray zones where external powers could meddle, and also by creating a single market of unprecedented scale. Today, we face a moment just as consequential as those in the past, and maybe even more so if you look at the geopolitical picture. Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine has shattered the illusion that Europe's security can be taken for granted. Hybrid attacks, disinformation, energy coercion, pressure on our borders are part of our daily reality. Once again, enlargement is not purely a technical process. It is a strategic response. We already see the consequences of inaction. Look at Georgia, a country whose people overwhelmingly want a European future, yet whose leadership is restricting political expression and shrinking civic space. Georgia is also a stark reminder of what happens when Russia succeeds, when a country is left in the gray zone, exposed to coercion and democratic backsliding. Enlargement is a security policy by another name. Let us apply this to our current candidate countries. A stable, democratic Ukraine inside the EU would strengthen Europe's security more than any fence or border patrol ever could, push the EU's frontier hundreds of kilometers eastward, reduce the space of Russian aggression, and integrate one of Europe's largest and most innovative defense industries into our collective capacity. At the same time, it would ensure also the future of Ukraine, a country fighting for its survival, is tied to ours. The same is true for Moldova. Bringing Moldova into the EU would protect Moldova, but also push instability and hybrid aggression away from our borders. This is also why we have just signed the new security and defense partnerships with Moldova, as well as we already have them with North Macedonia and Albania. Security cooperation strengthens our collective resilience and means these countries are contributing to Europe's security long before they are part of the European Union, long before the accession day. In the Western Balkans, unresolved tensions can be too easily exploited by external actors, with spillover effects also to Europe. This is a region where young people like you, are now deciding whether their future is European or not, democratic or not. Integrating the Western Balkans into European Union is not a favor to the Western Balkans. It is actually a strategic necessity for us. For enlargement to happen, we need to see action on two fronts. First, candidate countries must accelerate reforms, especially on the fundamentals: rule of law, judicial independence, media freedom, and the fight against corruption. And coming from a country that has gone all through this, it's not the question of, ticking boxes. It's actually a question of really prosperity for the countries. Because if the companies trust your legal system, then they also trust to bring their money to investment to your countries, which in turn means prosperity, jobs, growth for the people. Second, we need to also get ourselves ready. That is why we have launched reflections on EU internal reforms so that the larger union can still act swiftly and efficiently. Being ready is also about mental preparedness and public support. And this is also where all of you come in. Young people have always been the driving force behind Europe's most transformative moments. You are the ones who study abroad, build friendships across borders, see Europe as a lived reality, not just a map, and understand instinctively that Europe is strongest when Europe is united, not fragmented. But we all have to fight for this. And believe me, I'm doing this every single day. It's not always easy. The last time the window of enlargement was open was 13 years ago, but then it closed again. Now the window is wide open again, but we already see signs that, it's slowly closing. So we really, really need to make everything out of this moment right now, that new countries joining by 2030 is a realistic goal, but it is also the choice that we make nonetheless. Together, let us choose Europe that is larger and safer for it. To paraphrase another famous call to action, ask not what European Union can do for your country, but what your country can also do for Europe. Thank you, and I'm ready to take your questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And mindful of your agenda and also of the schedule of the conference, I think we have about 15 to 20 minutes now. And I said I wanted to start with the second row where I see some young guests. Please, Ms. Rekovic, introduce yourself, where you're from, and then your question.
My name is Valentina Rekovic. I'm coming from Serbia, and thank you for opportunity to ask Ms. Kallas a question. Thank you very much. Maybe you saw, maybe you didn't, but I will inform you in my question. Can you briefly comment on the fact that the President of Serbia, Aleksandar Vučić, held talks with parliamentary parties about the direction Serbia should take in its foreign policy, even though Serbia had already made formal decision long before his rule that its path is toward the European Union, and at the same time his people opening Russian consulate in Novi Sad 2 days ago. And if you can comment this. Thank you.
Yes, when we talk about enlargement, then one of the things that we ask the candidate countries is the full alignment with our common foreign and security policy. And especially now in this geopolitical situation and the tensions, instability that we have in the world, it's not only a box-ticking exercise. It's actually a question whether you see the world in a similar way as we do in Europe, or you don't. And that's why we are asking really this full alignment. And currently, what I see here, Serbia's alignment rate remains very low. It's currently 64%. Now, why is it important? I understand, countries also wanting to sit on the fence, and we don't only have Serbia, but other countries as well who want to, we are not picking sides. We are trying to make the most out of it from everything. But then, we already have problems inside the European Union with that we don't see the world the similar way. And that's why, and we are working so hard to have a united position. When we don't have a united position, when we are not united, then, of course, we are also not credible. And when we are talking about increasing our geopolitical influence in the world, then we should also act as a geopolitical powers act. And there, it depends whether we are united or not. So why I'm saying this in this context is that every time we then, weigh also the candidate countries, there are definitely countries inside the European Union who will come and say, look, they are not aligned with us, even being outside of the European Union. So, why to bring them in to actually cause trouble of decision making even more? So that's why it is extremely important. Of course, you have your democratic processes, but I think in these geopolitical times that we are living, there have to be very clear choices. Either how do you see the world evolving? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question, Ms. Starepravo.
Good evening. I'm Natalia Starepravo, representative of SD platform in Ukraine. So my question to Madam Kallas. Ukrainian society often hears claims that Ukraine's accession to European Union is only possible if there is lasting peace in Ukraine. How do you see specific steps to ending Russian war in Ukraine and sustainable peace in Ukraine? Thank you.
Thank you. That is a very, very good question. And right now we see Russia only representing their maximalist claims. Wanting to actually subjugate Ukraine, wanting to go much further than only Ukraine, and we don't see them taking the negotiations seriously. So on our side, we have seen that we have this two-track approach. On one side, to put more pressure on Russia because we see their economy is not doing well, they're not doing well on the battlefield, they're losing a lot of people, they come into issue of recruitment. And on the other side, so we need to increase the pressure that we have on Russia, and the other side, we have to support Ukraine to sustain and push back this pressure. And at the same time, why we push back the pressure that comes from Russia and other actors actually to give up the territories. Why I always say this, that, it seems very easy to say from people who are outside the countries that are in war, that why don't you just give up the territories? But it's never about the territories. There are people living on those territories. And we just in March had the anniversary of Bucha massacre. This happens to the occupied territories, to the people on those occupied territories. And that's why I totally understand why Ukraine just can't give up the territories that Russia hasn't even been able to conquer militarily in this 12 years that the war has been going on. So we don't see any other possibility but to increase the pressure so that, Russia would go from pretending to negotiate to actually negotiate. And we would have a better outcome, because keeping in mind all the time, there's one aggressor and one victim. So there is no pressure on the aggressor right now, but a lot of pressure on the victim. And that's why it's not the long and sustainable peace. And what the other thing that I want to stress, which is very, very important, but not only in Ukraine, but also in other wars that we see going on right now, which is accountability. If the people don't see that people are held accountable responsible for the crimes that are committed to their families, to their homes, then, there will be revenge and retaliation, and this cycle will never end. And that's why it is important that there is accountability in Ukraine, but also in the Middle East.
Excellent. We don't have time for applause, but it is very good. Huh? You please, Mr. Menabde.
Thank you. My name is Alexander Menabde. I am from the For Georgia Party. This is the party of the former Prime Minister García, under whose leadership Georgia was the front runner of the EU candidates. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the remarks you made about Georgia. Our youth is really in need of your support. And my question is about the hybrid warfare. As you know, especially since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Russia started to utilize its platforms from the misinformation campaign, which is extremely evident in Georgia, along with EU member states and EU candidate states as well. So my question is, what kind of leverages and tools could you utilize to counter this warfare? Thank you.
I have one question after this. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, yesterday we had very, very extensive discussions regarding Georgia with the foreign ministers of European Union. And really saying that Georgia is, example where we have actually, the Russian influence has taken over. And actually one thing that I want to stress here, I hear very often when I go outside Europe, I hear very often that, but Russia has their worries and the root causes of conflicts and the threats that are posed to them. Let's be very clear. In 100 years, last 100 years, Russia has attacked at least 19 countries, some as many as 3 or 4 times. None of these countries has ever attacked Russia. So it's not the issue about actual, invasion. But what is it about is democracy. Russia does not want democracy to come closer. And why? Because in democracies, we have elections in every 4 years where people express their opinion. What do they think if you start the war or whatever? So this is what they are afraid of. And that's why they are starting these conflicts also around Europe, so that, there would be open conflicts, so that democracy would not come closer. So that's why they're making these efforts. And the hybrid warfare is one of the tools. We have in Europe developed the tools to also fight the hybrid warfare. FIMI, the foreign malign influence and interference in elections, we use these tools for Moldova. Now also Armenia is getting a new civilian mission for the resilience of democracy. So, there are a lot of tools to use, but they are, of course, not always as effective as we would want to. And with Georgia, I think we lost the right moment. Now, the question for us yesterday, what we discussed was that what more can we do? Because we see the support in your society, but it's also the anti-EU narratives and propaganda that is very, very strong. So what we agreed is to, really work with the civil society, with the young people, also outside the capital, outside Tbilisi, so that, we could reach more people in this regard, that to give the messages that we are with Europe. Let's work together so that, the situation could change and your government could also take into account what the people want. But of course, with the high-level meetings, we are refraining from them because it would give or legitimize Georgian government and maybe give wrong signals.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take 2 questions, Mr. Malai and Mr. Kelmendi. Yes, please.
Thank you, Ms. Vice President. I'm an MP from Albania. I do represent the Socialist Party in Albania, and I'm honored to be here today. Actually, our ambition in joining the European Union is by 2013, and as you know, we're working intensively to meet all the conditions with this progress in mind. I want also our citizens to be clear into this as well. How realistic do you see our goal to get inside the European Union by 2030? Thank you.
Yeah, I am Libron Kelmendi from Kosovo. I represent the Self-Determination Party, the leading party in Kosovo. Today, Kosovo is the most advanced democracy in the region with the highest average economic growth. And it's been more than 40 months since we applied for EU membership. Ms. Kallas, do you believe it is the right time to make it official?
Thank you. I really like the short questions. You can't really, you can't really evade answers, right? No, on Albania 2030, do I see it realistic? I do see it realistic. Really, I mean, if we work on this, and you are making a lot of progress in the reforms. So I do see it realistic. And by the way, when we joined, there was a clear deadline that, for the elections, 2004 elections, that, our countries could already participate in the European Parliament elections. A very clear indication. So I find it realistic, but of course it depends on the member states. And there we really need to work with that public opinion, because when we see studies or polls in different member states, the support for enlargement, like I said, the enlargement or the opportunity window, I see it's closing again. And we really need to use this momentum, but we also need to educate the public, because there are always fears regarding enlargement. And we need to show, and by the way, it's interesting, Antonio Costa, who is now the president of the European Council, we had once the discussion and listening to all these fears that, all these Ukrainian plumbers are coming to our market and taking all our jobs. And then I said that when we joined, it was the Polish plumbers that are coming and taking everybody's jobs. And then Antonio said, when we joined, in Portugal, then it was the Portuguese plumbers that are coming and taking everybody's jobs. But, but the fears are not really grounded. But I want to stress that we need to work with that. On your question, first, the big obstacle, of course, is the normalization of the Belgrade-Pristina relationship. And we have the high-level meeting of the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue coming up, and I'm really working on that. But there, in order to, get over the hurdles, because I agree with you also, if you look at the map, it is, Europe is a peace project, so also the countries who are in Europe are actually not fighting, although they were fighting before. And when we have the Western Balkans meetings, where Kosovo and Serbia both are present, then they also say that, this is the format where we actually meet. So there is some value also, and again, what is it for us? What I want to stress here for the young people is that we really, I was hoping that people who have, been born after the atrocities and sort of you get over a bit of the history. Of course, you can't get over it entirely, but you sort of understand that we might have a different history, but we should have, let's focus on our common future, because we both need this. Now, when I was in Serbia and I had a meeting with the students, and then, we were discussing about, the human rights situation in Serbia and everything. And in the end, I asked them every one individual question. Is Kosovo a separate, independent country? And, I was surprised how they started to wiggle. It's like, oh, it's a complicated question. No, it's not a complicated question. It's a very simple yes and no question. Oh, but I can explain. And then one young law student was like, I can explain why I don't consider Kosovo a separate country. It's like, okay, I don't think a country that doesn't respect the human rights is like, excuse me, you have been telling me 1.5 hours how Serbia is not respecting human rights, and then you are saying that, because of that, you don't consider Kosovo a country. But, of course, people have different reasons. But my point is that we really need to work with the young people to overcome this, because it is hindering your future, but it's also hindering Serbia's future. And you know, you can't choose your neighbors; they're there, and we need to work with this. And we have good examples from Europe that we can take up and multiply. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, a round of applause for you. Stay put, because we have one more speaker, but we thank you very much. Excellent. Yeah, because in this opening segment we have one more very important and highly appreciated speaker left, and that is Ms. Kristina Šćepanović, and she is Vice President of the Young European Socialists. So very appropriate to have you as a closing speaker on the first segment of the conference. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, allow me to greet you as dear friends, because we are gathered here today as a theme shared by common goals and common purpose. So, dear friends, it is both an honor and a responsibility to open today's discussion on a topic that is not only political, but deeply personal for me and my generation: European Union's enlargement for a new generation. For many young people across Europe, especially in countries still outside of the EU, enlargement is not only an abstract political debate. It is a question of identity, opportunity, and a belonging. It is about the kind of future we will inherit, and more importantly, the kind of future we are determined to build. We are a generation that has grown up in a world more interconnected than ever before. We study together, travel together, work together, and communicate without borders. Yet, paradoxically, many of us still live with political and institutional barriers that separate us from very union whose values we are already embodied. This is why, for us, enlargement is not only about geography, it is about completing Europe. Young people today are not passive observers of this process. We are active participants, advocates, and in many ways, its strongest driving force. Across candidate countries, young people are leading initiatives, building civil society, fighting for democratic standards, and holding institutions accountable. We are promoting transparency, defending human rights, and pushing for reforms that align our societies with European values. But let us be clear. Our commitment is not transactional. We do not see European integration as a checklist of reforms to be completed. We see it as a natural and necessary path, because our societies are already European in their aspirations, in their diversity, and in their belief in democracy, solidarity, and the rule of law. For my generation, the European Union is not just a political project, it is a community of values, and it is precisely these values that inspires us to stay, to fight, and to believe in change, even when the process seems slow or even uncertain. At the same time, we must address a reality that many young people feel: frustration. Frustration with delays, with shifting goalposts, and with a lack of clear political will. This frustration, if left unanswered, risks turning into disillusionment. And disillusionment is dangerous, not only for enlargement, but for democracy itself. This is why European Union must recognize young people not only as beneficiaries of enlargement, but as essential partners in shaping its future. Youth must have a seat at the table, not symbolically, but meaningfully. Our voices, our ideas, and our energy are not supplementary, they are indispensable. Equally important, we must be honest about our direction. For countries like mine, there is no real alternative to European Union membership, and I come from Montenegro. regional initiatives, while potentially useful as complementary frameworks, cannot and must not replace the EU perspective. They do not offer the same level of institutional stability, economic opportunity, and value-based integration. And this clarity matters. Our path is clear. Our future is European, because ambiguity creates space for external influence that do not share the same democratic principles. It weakens reform efforts and undermines trust in institutions. For young people who are already navigating uncertainty in many aspects of life, this lack of direction is particularly discouraging. But despite these challenges, we remain committed. We remain committed because we believe in Europe that is united, not divided. A Europe that is inclusive and not exclusive. A Europe that recognizes that its strength lies in its diversity and in its ability to grow. Enlargement, therefore, is not a concession. It is an investment in stability, in democracy, and in the future of the continent. And young people are the heart of this investment. We are the generation that will live with the consequences of today's decisions. We are the generation that will carry forward the European project, and we are the generation that refuses to accept a Europe that is incomplete. So let this be our message today. Enlargement is not just about bringing new countries into the European Union. It is about bringing Europe closer to its own ideals. And young people are not just waiting for the future to happen. We are already building it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kristina, for that. And good to know for everyone also in the back that here in the front are all the shadow or rapporteurs from the S&D group on all the countries except one. Only Georgia is missing. They are here all the time listening, and our Vice President for Enlargement is here as well. We now have just a 1-minute break to change the podium here, so stay seated, and we'll see you at the other side of this 1 minute.
Good afternoon again. Good afternoon again, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues. As Thijs previously mentioned, I am more than delighted. I'm honored and proud to open this first session of country-by-country conversations. In this session, we will hear from young leaders from our sister parties in Serbia, Kosovo, Bosnia-Herzegovina, North Macedonia, and Turkey on the situation in their countries and on what EU enlargement means for them. The speakers we have, and this is very important, 3 to 5 minutes, and they can also ask a question from the MEPs, after which you will respond and can ask a question back from the young leader, also up to 3 to 5 minutes. It can also be shorter, no obligation to use all the time, of course. This is very important because I will need to be very strict with time. So, I would like to begin with Serbia, a country where the political situation remains deeply concerning, but where progressive forces continue to push for a European future. We have 2 speakers here today to tell us more, and I'd like to give the floor for a maximum to 5 minutes to Ms. Valentina Rekovic, member of the Presidency, Party of Freedom and Justice, SSP Serbia. Please, Valentina, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Very dear friends, members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, I come from a country that has not aligned with the European policy regarding the war in the Ukraine. I come from a country that exported weapons to Israel while Gaza was being flattened. I come from a country where camps were organized to train people to cause unrest during elections in Moldova, and whose security services recorded a meeting of the Russian opposition and gave those recordings to the authorities in the Kremlin, which resulted in people ending up in Russian prisons. I come from a country where students, opposition politicians, and citizens are beaten by police and para-police forces because they fight for freedom, democracy, and European values. I come from Serbia, which is formally negotiating accession to the EU, but in reality is moving further away every day from the values on which the Union is founded. A country where in 2012, 67% of citizens supported EU membership, but after 40 years of Aleksandar Vučić, that percentage is barely 35. At the moment when European officials are considering freezing up to 1.5 billion due to the state of the judiciary and the electoral process, it is important not to see this as a technical issue of misleading laws, but as a deeply political problem. 2 days ago, Marta Kos stated that these funds would be frozen if Serbia does not ensure free elections. But I must be honest with you, as long as Aleksandar Vučić and his circle remain in power, there will be no free elections in Serbia. Serbia is entering an election year, and the conditions are even worse than in 2023 when the European Parliament itself confirmed numerous electoral irregularities in its resolution, and the ODIHR mission also identified serious electoral fraud. What is particularly important to understand is that the election in Serbia are stolen long before the election day. Employees are blackmailed with their jobs if they do not support the ruling party. Voters are bought for money, and this is done almost openly. Voters are relocated to manipulate election results. At the same time, violence, organized groups, and paramilitary structures operate freely in the streets. They were protected by the police instead of the police protecting citizens and observers. The media are fully controlled by the regime. The president of Serbia has appeared on national frequency television stations hundreds of times over the year, almost daily, often for more than half an hour. Not a single official from my Party of Freedom and Justice has appeared on any of these stations in the past 2.5 years. In such circumstances, any change in the law remains without real effect because the problem is not only in the rules. The problem lies with those who implement them and who build this system, and that is why I want to raise a question that has been avoided, the question of individual responsibility. The European Union should not focus only on the state, while individuals who undermine democracy face no consequences. And that is precisely why many of us fear the worst-case scenario, and I must say this openly, that the regime will not accept electoral defeat under any circumstances, and that this could lead to serious internal conflict in Serbia. They know that with free elections and the rule of law, they would be held accountable for corruption, and that's why they are blocking Serbia's path to Europe. So how can you help? By ensuring that the EU stops reacting to promises and starts reacting only to concrete results, because my generation and I want to live in the EU, not in a small Russia. And that is why introducing targeted sanctions against individuals who actively undermine the rule of law, control the media, and manipulate elections is no longer a matter of political sharpness, it is a matter of the EU's credibility. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Rekovic. Thank you for keeping up with time. I now give the floor to Mr. Norbert Molnar, International Secretary, Democratic Youth Serbia.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here. It's a big honor, and yes. Dear fellow socialists, friends, and known faces. We are talking about youth and empowerment and enlargement. And Serbia is in a unique situation where the problems that countries and youth in different countries tend to have by lacking a clear definition what youth is, and lacking a clear representation or representational force that can drive meaningful change, is different in Serbia. Why is that so? Because we in Serbia have the student movement. The student movement was born out of deep necessity and not as a result of some design mechanism or strategy. And they became the representatives of not just the youth, but all democratic aspirations of the Serbian people. So if we are talking about empowerment and we want to empower youth, that's the starting point I would suggest we should work with. So with the student movement, the positive thing about having the student movement and them being the representatives of the whole democratic aspirations of a whole nation is that by empowering our youth, by empowering our students, we are not just empowering a group of people who are aged 15 to 30 with different backgrounds, different aspirations, different dreams, but we are supporting the whole democratic aspirations of a nation. Of course, this approach has its problems. A couple of them, but because we don't have so much time, I would just talk about one that's most important for us here in this situation, for us people who are sitting here, and that's the lack of trust between some parts of the student movement and the EU. Where does this lack of trust originate from? Where does it come from? It's also quite a broad topic that we could talk at length about, but it's rooted in some perceptual situation on the side of the students, because the EU is perceived as an actor who is making deals with the corrupt Serbian elite, who are not consistent in a messaging, not putting the right priorities, and not supporting the things that matter. So again, recognizing the immense work that should be that's required to solve this problem, I just have a couple of recommendations for all of us that we could take as starting points for a conversation. I would like to see from the European Union a clear situation, clear approach to support the things that matter the most at this moment in the Serbian society, and that's the democratizations and the democratic processes, supporting those processes. In other words, let's create a democracy in Serbia first. Let's focus on that, and after that, everything will be easier. I would also suggest that for the European Union that that they should talk not only with the institutional representatives but also informal actors. And as closing statement, as closing thought, I would just say that we also have to keep in mind that enlargement will only succeed if those who would benefit from it are supporting it and ready to carry it. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Molnar. And I will give the floor for also a maximum of 5 minutes to Mr. Tonino Picula, MEP, EP Rapporteur on Serbia, for his reaction. Please, Tonino.
Thank you, Marta, and thank all our young colleagues to be gathered here in Brussels, of course, on this very important event. And I think it's important to send a message to younger generations about core values of the European Union, but also about certain technicalities which are matters in a way. Regarding enlargement, I think it's good to know and start with that now we are living in the longest period in the European Union history without enlargement. Last time European Union enlarged 13 years ago when my country, Croatia, entered European Union, and now after the 13 years we are talking about possibility that EU may extend, of course, its own not only territory but set of the values on some other countries. But process is still very fragile. It's not easy to foresee the end of it. Regarding Serbia, I think we are talking about core problem of the enlargement on the Western Balkans, because Serbia is not second-range country. It's the single most important country in the region because its size, number of citizens, and influence on some other neighboring country in the region. So it affects and may affect on enlargement process as well as in the internal situation in some neighboring country, naming, of course, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Montenegro, and, of course, of the Kosovo. But things in Serbia are very critical. And in Serbia, things are moving very fast in this moment, and it's very wrong direction. There are every reason to change not only the European Union's narrative towards Vučić regime in Serbia, but what is much more important, and I want to underline, the policy of supporting the regime in Belgrade. The stagnation of the process, which takes place for 4 years, speaks of the move towards the events in the country, but it's not enough. We need, of course, to not only change a narrative, but we also need to change the policy. In contrast to criteria for the progress of accession negotiations, clusters, chapters, whatever we can name it, Vučić has long since fulfilled all criteria for the European Union to tighten relations with his government. Unfortunately, nothing happened for too long, regardless of everything he did and how he credibly cancelled Serbia's declared ambition to join the European Union. Just for reminder, he said years and a half before that he will conclude all technical needs and technical matters before the end of the current 2026. It's completely unreal, but it's not the only thing we can put a finger on. So I think that the loudest message is the possible withholding of funds, which, unlike some previous financial instruments, growth planned are clearly conditional. I know that because I was part of, on behalf of the Parliament, part of the negotiating team. So I welcome the insistence on conditions, but this pressure from Brussels comes maybe late, because the right moment was last year when Vučić went to Putin's Red Square and attended a Russian military parade. This was the ultimate proof that he would rather stand in solidarity with the aggressor in Ukraine than with European Union policy of imposing sanctions on Russia. In addition, internal situation in Serbia is getting worse and worse. The regime is intensifying purges in the media, police, army, judiciary, and school system. So repression in Serbia is constantly increasing, while rights are either being abolished or reduced. And the last so-called Mrdić laws, of course, we are talking about Vučić laws, significantly reduce the powers of the Special Prosecutor's Office to fight corruption and judiciary ability to prosecute corruption. My answer on your question, yes, we put in our very resolution of the European Parliament that option for individualized sanctions towards the members of the regime, and we stand for it. But of course, we need other two institutions in trinity of institutions to back our claim. So we are here waiting for them. But of course, I would like to ask you something, if it's possible to do. Yeah. You never know when Vučić will call for the snap elections. Maybe around the Đurđevdan, late June. I don't know. Yeah. Are you ready for that elections? Because I've been told in Belgrade that it's at least 3 Serbias which do not communicate each other. Of course, regime Serbia, you got nothing with them, but it's a student Serbia and institutional party Serbia. So my question to you, what will you do? Can you merge, can you join your efforts with the students' movement in order to achieve a victory? And victory is possible even against the harsh authoritarian regimes. Last example, Hungary, 2/3 majority, 80% of turnout. So it's possible. And how do you feel about your campaign strategist? What can you do with the students together or not? Thank you.
Well, if maybe I can answer, because if him and me answer, we will have different answers on your question, so that's a problem. Well, in front of the Party of Freedom and Justice, we are calling the students on the dialogue, on the conversation every day, and now it's on them what they're gonna do. We don't know yet their orientation foreign orientation, but we need to talk to know what they are thinking and what we are thinking, and that is not happening. And only we can do now is the opposition parties are merging together, and they having some meetings and talking about the elections, who might be by the end of this year. We know that can happen, and I think we will be ready, like 1 list, 2 lists, I don't know, but I think that in front of the Party of Freedom and Justice, we won't do anything that can lead to the fact that Aleksandar Vučić is staying on his positions. We won't do anything against that, and that's it. Thank you.
Concerning my party, the Democratic Party, our leadership, our presidency took the decision quite early on to focus all of our strengths just behind the student movement. Like, in some words, one of our senior members said, we are ready to die on this hill, even if our party disappears after these elections. We are giving everything that we have, manpower, money. We don't have money, but we give our money that we have. All of our knowledge, experience, everything that we have, we are standing behind the students, and also if we talk about police, between the police and the students. So we are ready to sacrifice everything just to get rid of this regime. And this is really similar as in Hungary, where some oppositional parties said, okay, for the common good, we are stepping back in some certain electoral districts, so the opposition can win. And we are having the hope that after we get rid of this regime and we have a new government, they will create the necessary conditions for free and fair elections, and we will see what happens then. Then the best will win again. But this sacrifice is needed now.
Thank you so much. We now turn to Kosovo, the youngest country in Europe with a very pro-European population. Unfortunately, Kosovo is still a potential candidate country, as already has been said, without the formal candidate status not yet granted by the Council. So I would like to give the floor for a maximum of 5 minutes to Mr. Libron Kelmendi, President of Youth Forum, member of Presidium, Vetevendosje.
Thank you very much. Dear friends, members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to be here today, seated among friends with whom we share not only our aspirations and dreams, but also the concerns that arise from complex processes such as the enlargement of the European Union, especially for the region we come from. As mentioned, Republic of Kosovo is the youngest population on the continent. For us, as young people, as Vice President of Young European Socialists said, enlargement is not an abstract geopolitical debate. It is more a choice about where we belong and how we build our future. For our generation, enlargement and integration are decisive in shaping opportunities in the countries we come from. For years, Kosovo has not passively waited the prospect of enlargement and integration. Instead, we have worked hard for stronger democratic institutions and to align ourselves with European values and standards. Today, we have made tangible progress on the rule of law, in establishing legal framework to combat corruption, increasing transparency in public procurement, and implementing financial policies that demonstrate economic growth. These are not just cosmetic adjustments, but structural reforms that deepen democratic governance. We have demonstrated our alignment with the European Union foreign policy, including sanctions and broader strategic orientations. In times of geopolitical uncertainty, alignment matters, not only to show or demonstrate aspiration, but to demonstrate values and responsibility. We are fully aware that membership is about contributing to the shared European project, to democracy, to social equality, and to the rule of law. At the same time, we cannot ignore a paradox. While we hear renewed calls for European Union enlargement as a strategic need, Kosovo's application remains in the EU drawers for more than 40 months. For younger generation in Kosovo, this creates uncertainty. When merit does not translate into political progress, frustration grows. And today in the Western Balkans, frustration is the greatest risk to European credibility. Enlargement cannot be reduced to debate in rhetoric. It must be a process in which achievements are recognized and future steps are clearly structured. At this point, we are not asking for shortcuts. We are not asking for different standards. We ask only for equal treatment and fair assessment of our progress. Our country is ready for the candidate status, as well as it is ready for the responsibilities that negotiation will bring. We must remind ourselves, this is not a reward. Negotiations are the framework for further reform and development. For young people in Kosovo, Europe is not merely an institution. It is a vision where democracy works, when justice applies equally to all, and where progress is recognized. We do not look at Europe from the outside, because today we are part of it, politically and culturally. The question, however, is whether this reality will in the near future be matched by institutional integration. We, as a new generation, are ready to contribute to a stronger Europe. We are committed to reforms, committed to constructive engagement in regional dialogue, committed to the values that define European Union. We stand ready to move forward in this path, confident and clear in our orientation, and committed to building our future within the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kelmendi. And now I give the floor for a maximum 5 minutes to Mr. Elio Di Rupo, MEP, SND Shadow Rapporteur on Kosovo, for his reaction, please.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Tonino, because what he said has great influence for Kosovo in regard to the EU. Secondly, indeed, since 1 year we were in Pristina for the elections. This situation is difficult, and I don't know where you are working for the presidency of Kosovo. I think the last date is 28th of April, something like that. But this is a very important signal for the EU. And we cannot act. We just are a passive spectator. Secondly, when we speak about EU, indeed here in the European Parliament you are in the best institution of the EU, very ready to help you, especially the youth and the young people, but they are also the Commission and the Council. And in the Council until now, 4 countries has not recognized Kosovo. This is not something simple. But that's true that Kosovo has made a lot of effort. And we have to recognize that it's maybe one of the best, the advanced country on the democratic way. But there are other steps to overcome. And especially the relations with Serbia. Mrs. Kallas has explained how it's important, and for the EU, it's a condition. And with what Tonino said, it's not simple. For the rest, you have to be sure that we are with you, and especially with young people. We think that it's possible to reach all the engagement needed to enter in the EU, but it remains many steps to overcome. And we are following you, we are helping you, but the first condition is inside. It's a little bit like in Serbia, in other conditions, but you are the first actors. And be sure that we are behind you. and we are ready to do a lot what we can do to help Kosovo, but it remains, we must to be honest, it remains a long way to be candidate and to enter in the EU. But well, you have to continue your effort, and I think it's possible.
Thank you so much. So let us now hear from another country, North Macedonia, a country that has shown real commitment to its European path, including through very difficult decisions. And I'd like to give the floor for a maximum of 5 minutes to Ms. Stefanija Kuzmanovska, Vice President of SDYM North Macedonia. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you once again for giving me the floor and for having us all here today. Dear colleagues, distinguished members of the European Parliament, dear progressives, it is an honor for me to speak here today on behalf of the Social Democratic Youth of Macedonia, and especially as a young person coming from a country that has been a candidate for the EU membership since 2005, which is more than 2 decades. Back then, I was a child when my country first received the candidate status. I have grown up, finished school, and even started my political career and journey. My generation grew up with the belief that we belong in the European Union, but unfortunately, today's reality is far more complex. This does not mean that we have not made progress. With the change of the government in 2017, when the Social Democratic Union, or my party, came into power, very significant and courageous steps were taken. One of them is the Prespa Agreement as well, that stands as a historic example of political leadership and compromise, opening the door for our NATO membership and advancing our European path. Afterwards, North Macedonia, we continued to face new challenges which often were linked to issues beyond the core accession criteria, while remaining committed to fulfilling the Copenhagen criteria and implementing reforms. And now, although the right-wing government presents itself as pro-European, they have shown reluctance in advancing key steps, particularly those strengthening the rule of law. Throughout these long and difficult periods, Euroscepticism, especially among young people, has been steadily increasing. And it's deeply concerning that recent surveys show that only around 41% of the young people in North Macedonia view the European Union positively, and 35% of the young people believe that North Macedonia may never join the Union. And this trend is constantly fueled by disinformation, manipulated narratives, and the influence of far-right, far-left, and anti-European actors who actively undermine the trust in the European Union. This should serve as a wake-up call for all of us, particularly for us progressives. We must rethink our approach and reshape our narrative, and the responsibility to defend the democratic values is on us. It's on the progressives, it's on the social democrats. If we want to rebuild trust, especially among the young people, we must speak to the real concerns of young people. We must speak about their future, their opportunities, and their quality of life. We have no plan B. The European Union is the only realistic path for economic security, for social stability, and for long-term prosperity. Every year, thousands of young people leave North Macedonia to move to the EU member states, and we are facing a serious challenge of brain drain. They are not moving only for economic reasons, but because they are searching for a functioning system, they are searching for stability, fairness, opportunity, and most importantly, they are searching for European future. We must ensure that the European perspective is not something distant and abstract for us, but something real. And at the same time, as we discuss the EU enlargement, Europe is facing not only geopolitical instability, but a deeper crisis of democracy. So when social democracy and progressive forces started to weaken, they create space for authoritarianism, they create space for populism, and they create space for the far right. The crisis of democracy begins with the crisis of social democracy and progressive forces, which shows that social democracy remains the strongest alternative to authoritarian and anti-democratic ideologies. Progressives must act. The far right is united and already mobilizing. But we need young people, not as decorations on conferences like this one, but as genuine participants in shaping the whole process. We need young people at the table. We need young people with real access, real information, and real power. And at the end, how can we build strong and sustainable European partnership if we do not complete the process of enlargement? Instead of losing the youngsters from North Macedonia, we must bring Europe closer to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Stefanija Kuzmanovska. And now I give the floor for a maximum of 5 minutes, please, to Mr. Thijs Reuten, MEP, SND Shadow Rapporteur on North Macedonia, for his reaction.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you, Stefanija, for your great intervention. I would say, because I can immediately build on what you said, because our last meeting in the Sobranje, when we had the delegation of the European Parliament there in North Macedonia with your Parliament, I almost said the same thing in one of my interventions, because I said, look, this is not about us. I'm 52, and some of you are a bit younger, a bit older. This is not about us. This is about a new generation. And when you are here trying to say or convince each other that you are actually saying that you want to join the European Union, but effectively are doing everything or grasping every possibility to find an excuse not to do it, not to do the work that needs to be done. And we all know what we are talking about. We are talking about a difficult decision that has to be made by the Sobranje on the constitutional amendments. But that decision has to be taken by all the politicians in North Macedonia, regardless of their political background, because then after that, there is enough time to have political fights, political debates, but we need to think about the future of the country, and we cannot afford, and that goes for us, the same as for those MPs in the Sobranje, that we have to respond in 20 or 40 years to our children and grandchildren when they ask us, what did you do when you had this tiny bit of influence? What did you do? You accommodated ethno-nationalistic infighting with one of the neighboring countries or something like that. That is not, we cannot afford that. So I'm really very happy with your intervention here, and I want to add one more story, one more personal story, because it's not just about a party or a coalition of parties promoting the EU accession. It's also about fundamental rights that go beyond EU accession, because as I always say, and many of us always say, you are not doing it for us, for me or for Tonino, you are doing it for yourself. And I remember when I came to Skopje the day after the local elections that were the start of your party going out of government. Then I spoke to somebody from a local activist, and she had the fear in her eyes, because she fought for 15 years for women's rights, for LGBTQ rights, for fundamental values, for an independent judiciary. And she got all these reforms, thanks to the government that came in 2017. But I saw the fear in her eyes. It was only local elections, but she thought, am I now going to lose that all again? Well, it's not that bad yet, but we need to be very vigilant, and we are on your side, not only on the side of our fellow comrades of the SDSM, no, on the side of all the Macedonians. So I thank you for your intervention, and let's continue this fight together. Thank you.
Thank you. And we continue with Bosnia and Herzegovina, a country of great complexity, but also of great European potential. The reform path is challenging, but progressive forces like SDP are working hard to keep it on track. And on that topic, I would like to give the floor for a maximum of 5 minutes to Mr. Belmin Zukan, MP, Social Democratic Party of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Please.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, I'm here today on behalf of the Social Democratic Party of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the party that has always viewed the European Union as more than a political project. We see it as a chance to build social justice, equality, and opportunity. And for young people, opportunities matter more than ever. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, youth support for EU membership is very strong. About 2/3 of young people support it, but these numbers are sadly decreasing. Young people believe in European Union because they associate it with fairness and better future, but that belief is weakening, and we must be honest about why. Bosnia and Herzegovina is a federal state, where progress depends on a political cooperation. In the past 4 years, and much longer, that progress has too often been blocked. At the state level, key reforms were delayed by actors who do not genuinely share the European path. The role of the SNSD, a party with openly pro-Russian position, has been central in this. A clear example is the EU growth plan, which we could not adopt for a long time due to political blockades. While others move forward, our young people are left waiting. And where there is no movement forward, trust declines, and trust in the institution overall is very low. From SDP's perspective, this is why enlargement must deliver real change, not only formal progress. In the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, federal unit of Bosnia and Herzegovina, where SDP is leading government partner, we have taken concrete steps. We have increased the minimum wage, strengthening the dignity of work. We have advanced in the fight against corruption, including establishing special court and prosecutor office against organized crime, because without accountability, there is no trust. And we have launched tax reforms to make the system fairer and reduce the burden on workers. These steps are not enough to transform the whole country, but they are enough to restore hope. Hope that institutions can work, that fairness is possible, and that young people can build their future at the home. Hope, ladies and gentlemen, one of the strongest messages that we saw from social democrats all over the world in last week's Global Progressive Summit. For young people, these EU values are not abstract. Rule of law means equal chances. Social justice means fair pay. And opportunity means staying in Bosnia and Herzegovina. We jointly must find a way to ensure that enlargement delivers real, visible improvements and that is moved forward despite the difficult circumstances we find ourselves in. Young people will find ways to be political, but it is up to us to ensure that these are politics of cooperation and hope for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Zukan. And I would like to give the floor now to Mr. Mathias Nemek, MEP, SND Shadow Rapporteur on Bosnia and Herzegovina, for his reaction.
Thank you, Marta. And if you remember, we've been in Bosnia and Herzegovina last time together to take a visit, even in Banja Luka. A warm welcome to all of you. I really believe that you should be, this should be also your house of democracy, and we are looking forward and we are waiting for you to having you as soon as is possible, because we as members of S&D Group, we really believe in that, and we are promoting and advocating all the time not just the peace, stability, but especially the prosperity of the Western Balkans and the Eastern Partnership, and all those
who wants to join us, including some countries from the north, like Iceland. I don't want to even imagine having Canada some days among European countries. Because of that, because of, let's say, a changing strategic position of the European Union regarding to the geopolitical changes that we are facing, that's why the enlargement process, it's becoming a strategic goal for all of us here in Brussels. The European Parliament used to be advocating all the time there is a need to implement as soon as is possible the integration also for Bosnia and Herzegovina as soon as is possible. Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's, let's say, from my point of view, the most specific when it comes to the politics country in the Western Balkans. And that's why it is very close to me personally. Coming from the region, I'm Slovenian, I know how many benefits we got becoming and being part of this family, including the Croatia, Romania, Bulgaria. And to those who are still skeptics when it comes to the enlargement process, I'm often saying, can we imagine European Union in this geopolitical, let's say, this geopolitical time, not having Romania and Bulgaria because of their strategical position in the European Union. So that's why it's also Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's one of those most important countries for us. So being close and contact with you, I'm convinced that the Party of the Social Democrats of Bosnia and Herzegovina is crucial to keep the European path of your country. As you well been said, you did an amazing job and you're promoting daily European values. And that's why we are proud of you personally, we are proud of your country. At the same time, we must speak honestly that the pace of reforms need to accelerate. And we know how many difficulties we are facing, especially when it comes to strengthening the rule of law, for example, or ensuring the functionality of institutions in a transparent way and in a close cooperation with civil society. This is my sincere appeal to you and to the rest of the Western Balkans countries, that you at most to implement the necessary reforms to secure the EU foundings, as has been already mentioned, the Grown Plan. This is for the people. And secondary, when it comes to the Bosnia and Herzegovina, we are all aware that without the appointment of a chief negotiator, there is no room to start the process. Next month, we have already started, but next month it's going to be crucial for the next report on the Bosnia and Herzegovina. And for me personally, it's important to problematize some rising of nationalism, because nationalism is not just Bosniak or Serbian or Croat, but nationalism, it's nationalism. So that's why we have to address the rising nationalism, whatever is coming from. So let me conclude by saying that we stand ready to support you and help you steer this path. And it is therefore my sincere wish that your country sees this is an opportunity for a reconciliation that is still needed after the war in the 90s, and a constructive cooperation within. This is a precondition for progress, peace and stability. But also we have to do our job. We have to convince also the Europeans how many benefits we can get because of the enlargement. We have already did in case of my country and many others. So this is an important because we have to fight for the European values and for that values that set up and build up this amazing project called European Union that is worth it to fight for. And please, we're waiting for you. We are more than welcome. And it's a big pleasure having you today in a House of the European democracy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matthias. And now to conclude this first panel, we turn to Turkey, a country where the accession process has been at a standstill for years, but where progressive forces continue to fight for a democratic and European future. And I would like to give the floor for a maximum to 5 minutes, please, to Ms. Melis Asia Bozali, International Secretary of CHP Youth, Turkey. Please.
Thank you. Dear representatives, I stand before you not only as a representative of a candidate country, but as a part of a generation building Turkey's democratic future and ready to contribute to the dynamism that Europe needs. We are often told that we are the leaders of the future. However, we do not have the luxury of waiting. We must have a voice at the table today. Today, being a young member of the CHP in Turkey means defending democracy at a time when the rule of law is under pressure and when elected leaders with the support of millions, such as our Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu and other arrested mayors, faces serious punishments. But let me be clear, we are not only resisting the pressure, we are a social democratic party that came first in the last local elections and is preparing to govern the country. Dear friends, certain entrenched perceptions regarding the relationship between Turkey and the European Union need to be reconsidered. Turkey is sometimes seen only as a security partner or a buffer zone. This view is incomplete and mistaken. For many years, Turkey has contributed to Europe's security architecture. Seeing Turkey only through its military role hides our shared potential. Framing Turkey as a strategic rival like China or Russia is incompatible with both historical reality and today's international balances. Such a perception is only not incorrect, it is contrary to Europe's interests. Turkey is not Europe's buffer zone, it's a part of Europe's history and its future. Now I would like to ask, what will Turkey contribute to the European Union? Not just geography or population, but growth, innovation and dynamism. Turkish youth will not only adapt to Europe's transformation, they will help move it forward. This relationship should be based on mutual benefit, not one-sided gain. The European Union is the greatest peace and cooperation project our continent has ever seen. Each enlargement wave has reflected the courage and the vision of this project, so why should this courage slow down? We need to expand the space of peace, a future in which Turkey as a full and effective member will strengthen trust, prosperity and stability. The principles applied in previous enlargement processes must not be applied differently when it comes to Turkey. For both Turkey and the European Union, consistency is key to credibility. In this context, I would like to underline 3 concrete points. First, the visa issue is an inequality of opportunity. The barriers faced by our academics, lawyers and young professionals go against Europe's own values. The demand of Turkish youth is clear, not brain drain, but brain circulation. Second, economic integration must go beyond symbolic steps. Young people need real access to funding and real freedom to work across Europe should be the tangible outcomes of this partnership. Third, participation in decision-making processes is a matter of legitimacy. The voices of those of us who defend local democracy under the most difficult conditions should resonate within European institutions, not as guests, but as stakeholders. Tomorrow we will celebrate the 23rd of April, National Sovereignty and Children's Day, established by the founder of our republic, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. However, we approach this meaningful day under the shadow of a painful loss we experienced last week in Kahramanmaraş. I extend my condolences to the families and to our society and wish mercy upon Ayla teacher and the young students who lost their lives. In a world where children are murdered in wars and school attacks, we cannot speak of peace or enlargement. In our struggle, we draw strength from Atatürk's words, there are no hopeless situations, there are only hopeless people. I have never lost my hope, and neither have we. We firmly believe that under a CHP government in Turkey, our country will become a true and equal part of this family. I would like to thank Socialists and Democrats Group for all the hard work. We will build our future together with determination, solidarity, and of course, without war. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bozali. And now I give the floor for a maximum of 5 minutes to Mr. Rezan Kaganazlan, DAM Party Youth Commission, please.
Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to welcome all of you on the name of the DEM Party Youth Assembly, which is an assembly and three main body of the DEM Party. It's not a commission, it's an assembly and preserve democracy inside it. And actually, it's great to hear today that we are discussing enlargement of UE, not as like enlarging the borders or like economic agreements, trade agreements, or tariffs, or military capacity, but about values, and we give too much importance to this. And we think that, of course, democratic values could be transmitted by negotiations and membership, but it's important to have internal democratic forces inside the countries. And this should be like the main aim of becoming UE members. If we have enough internal democratic forces inside the countries, we will be successful. Like as we know, Turkey is a situation of candidate for membership since 1999, and even it has like meet many of the criteria, majority of the criteria, there are still some criteria that should be met, and majority of them are related to the security-based view of the Turkish state, which are since 100 years they are viewing the Kurdish question. Actually, when we are discussing democratic rights in Turkey and democratization of the Republic of Turkey, is directly related to the Kurdish question, and it's not a coincidence to see that whenever the UE candidateship process is being discussed in Turkey, there was an also process for democratic solution for the Kurdish question as well. And today we are passing through a same process. In 27th of February of 2025, Mr. Öcalan made a call on the name of the Peace and Democratic Society. With this call, actually, Öcalan called for PKK to dissolve and lay down the arms, and PKK responded in a positive way. They dissolve themselves, they burn the weapons in Süleymaniye, and also they take all of their forces out of the Turkey. And after this, we see that a great space for the political discussions about Kurdish question was possible in Turkey. And state response all of these steps of the PKK and Öcalan as a commission on the Turkish Grand National Assembly. In this commission, it was like the first time that one of the official commission of the Turkish Grand Assembly confessed that the Turkish state is being seeing the Kurdish question on a state-based view. And this commission also established a report which includes that there should be some new democratization of the Turkish Republic to able to solve the Kurdish question, which includes following the decision of the European Human Rights Court, which includes the decisions about right to hope of Mr. Öcalan and decisions about Demirtaş and Osman Kavala. And of course, as youth, we are also supporting this peace process that is being initiated by Mr. Öcalan, because we know that, especially as DEM youth, we were being really highly criminalized by the states and the media and the government due to the presence of conflict and war. But with this process, we are able to reach the society more and organize youth more, because we know war and conflict just bring militarization and exploitation and migration to youth. But now with the chance of the peace, we are able to speak more politically and organize youth more. But of course, as we can say that when there is a negotiation between a state and force that works for the freedom, of course, it's not concluded. Its process is going on and everything is not concluded. Still, there are many human rights violations in Turkey and Kurdistan. As you have seen that during the Rojava attack protest in the January, there were like many protests, and in this protest, more than 50 times Turkish security forces, they interrupt the protest, and in total, they detained more than 850 youth. And 120 of these youth were being imprisoned just due to attending a protest that's protesting attack on Rojava. And the majority of these youth, they were members of the DEM Party Youth Assembly. And as we said, as a youth, we are supporting this process. We see clearly it on the Nowruz celebrations in the big city of Kurdistan, also in Istanbul, like in Diyarbakır, Istanbul, Ankara, Bursa, in Izmir. And in these celebrations, we see that like majority of the participants were youth, and they were chanting for the peace and freedom. But again, after the Nowruz celebrations, the attacks of the state continue, and more than 250 of the youth, they were being detained just to attend Nowruz celebrations. demonstration and marching some specific slogans for the freedom. And 63 of these youth were being prisoned, and we have many friends that are in prison, which are members of the DEM Party Youth Assembly. As we said, this is a process, and this is like a competition between the freedom forces and state forces, and all of the public voice of the European countries, all the Democrats should voice this process carefully, because nothing is end, but it's being negotiating. We open a door for democratization of the Turkey, and we will try to leave it as open with our effort or maybe with our body, but we are really ensure that this process will help us, Turkey, to become a democratic republic, and by this way, we will be able to contribute more to the democratic values of the European Union. And as a youth, we will be the main supporters of this process, so we will be able to reach a life that is worth for our dignity and which make us a stronger democratic country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kaja Kallas, and I now give the floor for a maximum of 5 minutes to Mr. Nacho Sanchez Amor, EP Rapporteur on Turkey, for his reaction. Please, Nacho.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Marta, and thank you both for coming, and thank you for offering us the plurality of the opposition, democratic opposition in Turkey. There are many things to comment, and one of the things is this horrible statement from Mrs. von der Leyen putting Turkey in the same basket that Russia and China, interfering or influencing Europe. And this is part of our disorientation because it's not true, because it's harming the relation, because it's depicting Turkey in a way that we have been reserved for real foes of Europe. You said that sometimes we consider Turkey only from the perspective of a security partner. But this is a problem coming from Turkey, because you know perfectly the rationale of the government saying to the public opinion for years, our military power is opening up to us the membership. It's not true, it's not happening. But this is the continuous propaganda of the palace, saying to the people, because we are very powerful from the military point of view, these people are disregarding democratic standards. Then I have to repeat again, to be member of the European Union is about democracy. It's not about drones. You know how many military personnel has Montenegro? 2,500. 200 times more is Turkey. But the soldiers of Montenegro are going to become citizens of the European Union well before any single Turkish citizen, because they understood very well what is this about. This is about democracy. This is about democratic standards. It has nothing to do with geopolitics. We have nothing to do with drones, military power, and that kind of let's say, narrative. And for that reason, my duty for years has been to try to disentangle this blurring narrative of the palace and to remind everyone that the European Union is still a club of democracies, and never used, and has been used in your country for the AKP, the Hungary example. Hungary has been the vaccine against to repeat a mistake of the past. Has not been a kind of blank passport to downgrade our standards. And then it's good to repeat to you, young activists, to be repeated in Ankara, in Istanbul, and in Izmir, and everywhere. To be member of the European Union is about democracy. If there is no progress in democratic standards, our military power is never been a shortcut to be member of the European Union. I criticize harshly already the statement of Mrs. von der Leyen, because it's completely misleading the European public opinion. At the same time that we say Turkey could be an excellent partner in security and defense, we are putting Turkey in the same basket that China and Russia did. It's meaningless, and we have to be aware of that. We are very sorry about what happened with the visa liberalization, but we struggle and we push the Turkish authorities to comply with the lacking 6 benchmark for every Turkish citizen to have visa liberalization. But they prefer to offer green passport to the friends of AKP. Everybody is good to know. We calculate in Turkey there are 2 million of green passports offered to the authorities, to the friends of the power, to the influential business people, and for that reason they are not taking care about your visas, the citizen visas. And for that reason you are having horrible delays in our consulates because there isn't any pressure on the authorities. They are solving the problem simply signing green passport for the friends. But this is again a thing that we are waiting some progress coming from your authorities. On the Kurdish issue, both parties, both socialist parties or progressive parties, had a long history of agreement and disagreement. And it was a big mistake from the CHP to facilitate the lifting of the immunities of some members of the DEM party. And they recognized that this was a mistake. And the new leadership of the party tried to create a good joint offer for many cities in your country. And you won the elections. And you won the elections in Istanbul, in Izmir, in Ankara, because you worked together against the AKP. As it happened in many other countries, has been mentioned by everyone in this part. When are you dealing with this issue? I know for sure there are good bases for that. It was the DEM in the past, always prosecuted, the mayor dismissed, the mayor replaced by people from the AKP who lost elections, and now is the CHP, the preferred prey of the authoritarian regime of Turkey. But you need to work together, because if not, you are going to be lured to be used your seats to allow Mr. Erdogan to run again. And you are having a lot of gifts. I'm sure they are getting rid of the trustee system. I'm sure your mayor are going to be reinstated because they need your votes to allow Erdogan to run again. And you have to be aware of this case. And as you said, if there is no democratic environment in Turkey, forget about the rights of the Kurds. Whatever is offered in this process of the peace process, and everybody is saying very, very kind things about the people they depicted as a terrorist. For years, whatever they say, the only way to dismantle this thing is to work together and having a democratic environment. Because if they offer in the peace process whatever you are asking, textbooks in Kurd, a TV in Kurdish language, that kind of cultural things. If there is no guarantees, if there is no democratic environment, it's going to disappear overnight, as it happened with the Istanbul Convention regarding the rights of the women. And for that reason, if this process is only about bargaining things with the Kurdish political forces, it's going nowhere. And the nomination of the current Minister of Justice is the best proof that there is no any kind of sincerity in the peace process. To me, the peace process suffered a big blow when Mr. Erdogan decided to put, as a Minister of Justice, to the prosecutor who put Imamoglu in jail. This is the real soul of the authoritarian regime. I'm not sure about what could be the outcome of the peace process. I hope really that it could be differently than it was in the past, but be careful, because you are going to be used only for the purpose of allowing Erdogan to run again. Thank you.
Thanks to all our speakers and rapporteurs. As we have a couple of minutes, I would like to open the floor for questions. Short questions, short answers, please, alternating between perhaps MEPs and young panelists, and if there is time, other guests. But each question should be no longer than 1 minute, and the same for the answers. Please, 1 or 2 questions, raise your hands if you want. Please. Nobody want? So we changed the panel, and we conclude this first session. It was a very interesting session. We do not stop for coffee, but we can invite all of you to go and bring coffee. And we changed the panel for the second one. Please.
Dear friends, please take your seats again, because we are going to start again. Please take your seats. We are doing fantastic. We are on schedule. Yes, that's okay. We will start the second round of candidate countries with Albania, the country that made a lot of progress in its accession negotiations. 5 chapters already opened, a credible timeline in sight. That progress did not come by accident. The leading political force for many years is driving that process forward. And we are privileged to hear from Erion Malai. We already heard from him a little bit before in the session with Kaja Kallas. So everyone has up to 5 minutes. Up to means that less is also okay. But go ahead, Erion.
I will try my best. Thank you very much. Well, honorable members of the European Parliament, dear friends, it is an honor for me to stand here today representing the Socialist Party of Albania at a defining moment, I would say, for our country and its irreversible journey towards the European Union. We often speak about enlargement as a process with chapters, benchmarks, and timelines, of course. But for Albania, and especially for young people, this has never been just a process. It has been a journey of transformation. It sounds more as a journey from isolation to belonging, from being outside Europe to becoming part of its future. And this journey has not been abstract. Actually, over the last decade, under the leadership of the Socialist Party of Albania, we have moved towards the European Union, not with words, but of course with decisions. We moved forward at an unprecedented pace, opening all negotiation clusters in record time. This has strengthened expectations among our citizens. We undertook a justice reform that many thought was impossible. We aligned ourselves fully with the European Union, and this is what commitment looks like. But after all these years, there is something we learned, that actually countries do not join the European Union. People do, generations do. And today, the generation that matters is our youth. They are the most European part of our society. They speak the language of Europe, they live its values, they move with its rhythm. But of course, we still have a lot to do, and especially with this new generation, while we are negotiating to enter Europe. Many of them have left the country to find Europe, not because they reject Albania, but because they are searching for opportunities for a European future they can touch today, not tomorrow. And this is where our responsibility becomes more real than ever. As a governing party, of course, we cannot ask young people to wait for Europe. We must bring Europe closer to them, and this happens in different ways, through better education, through real support for innovation and entrepreneurship, through opportunities that make staying not a sacrifice, but a choice. And believe me in this, we are all doing our best. The Albanian government is fully committed to creating real opportunities for young people to build their future at home through investments in education, innovation, and employment. At the same time, we are working to bring Europe closer to them by aligning standards, expanding access to European Union programs, and making the European path tangible in their everyday lives. But at the same time, enlargement itself must evolve, because we believe Europe cannot be only a destination at the end of a long road. It must be present along all the way. More access to programs, more mobility, more integration into the European economy, and these are not technical details. These are real signals, signals that young people are not outside looking in, but already part of the story. So in the end of the question, it's not only how fast Albania moves toward Europe, the real question is how fast Europe becomes real also for young Albanians today. Because if Europe is only a promise for tomorrow, young people will look for it somewhere else today. And if we want enlargement to succeed, we must make sure that this generation does not grow up waiting for Europe, but living Europe. Because Europe is not a promise for tomorrow, it is our responsibility today. And without its youth, Europe is not whole and completed. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. 15 seconds left. Excellent. Yeah, I'm Dutch, so I like the timekeeping. Thank you so much, Erion, for your great words. And I now give the floor to our rapporteur for Albania, because I said in the beginning they are all here, and now we also are joined by the shadow rapporteur on Georgia, and also Marco Tarquinio is here. So a lot of presence here from our MEPs. But the floor is now to Andreas Schieder, the rapporteur on Albania.
Thank you, Thijs, and special thanks to Erion for his work, and also for the good cooperation. And as Erion mentioned, a lot of deep reforms which Albania undertook in the past, like the justice reform, which was the deepest one in the whole Western Balkan. I think this is important also to merit this. And I think the goal to finish 27 or 28 all the negotiation chapters, and then to be ready to start the final negotiation, and maybe also to become one of the next new members of the European Union. This goal is vital, and I think it's reachable, and therefore we have to do everything. And therefore, for me, 3 points are extremely important. The one is it's not only about opening chapters, closing chapters, it's also about implementation and to make the people in the country to feel this reform and changes of the society and the economy arriving there. Secondly, as young people were mentioned, I think all the Western Balkan and also Albania is facing a huge brain drain. A lot of young Albanians are outside the country because it's simple. They want to be part of the European Union. Either the Union comes to them or they go to the Union. And the membership of the European Union is also a chance, and also the way towards a membership is a chance to change this situation, to give a signal to young people that they also can come back from Europe, back to the country and contribute to the development of the country. And the third thing is that I think it's not only about an issue for the Albanian politicians to discuss inside Albania. It is important also to go to the member countries, to the society in the European Union, and to tell the story that Albania already now has changed so dramatically that it's a different country than very often media and others in our society think. And this is the important step also to make an enlargement successful, because it's only also successful if all the 27 member states also standing behind. But I have to say, Albania is doing great on this.
Thank you very much, Andreas. And then we will, yeah, it's very good, very good. We're improving. Oh, you can speak, eh? It's not that I... Up to 5 minutes. The second country of, well, the two front runners, at least in Southeastern Europe, the other two front runners, according to the Commission, are Ukraine and Moldova. But the other one, obviously, is Montenegro. And I think that when we had the election campaign for the European elections in 24, some of us maybe said, I did at least, well, it would be great to have at least 2 new countries joining in the next mandate before 2029. And everybody said, yeah, well, it's not so realistic. Now it's suddenly realistic, thanks to the hard work in Albania, but also in Montenegro, and that is something to draw some hope from. So we will move to Montenegro, and there we have two representatives from the SD Youth. First of all, Jovana Markovic, the International Secretary.
Thank you. Distinguished members of European Parliament, esteemed colleagues, dear friends. I am so honored, firstly, to be here with you, then to speak in front of you. I stand before you not only as a representative of Social Democratic Party of Montenegro, but also as a young person and a citizen of the country that has spent my entire conscious life in the European Union waiting room. For my generation, the European Union is not a distant diplomatic process or a collection of technical chapters. It is our primary hope for a fair and functional society. As we discuss empowering young people, we must be honest. True empowerment is not a gift granted from governments. It is the result of a system that works, a system where the rule of law is not a slogan, but a lived reality. If enlargement is to serve the new generation, we must move beyond technical process and focus on value-based progress. Montenegro may be a front-runner, aiming to close all negotiation chapters by 2026, but as a young person I must ask, what does a closed chapter truly mean if a university diploma still does not guarantee a fair opportunity? What does it mean if our environment remains unprotected, or if our economy is not fully digitalized and stable? Empowerment means involving young people now, not later. It means ensuring that EU funds reach students, innovators, and entrepreneurs in every part of Montenegro. It means that European standards are not something we wait for until 2028, but something we begin to live today. At the same time, we cannot speak about the future without acknowledging present challenges. Montenegro, like many societies, faces pressure. As you may know, the political reality in Montenegro remains clouded by populism. As a young person and a representative of opposition party, I am concerned by the policies that prioritize short-term political goals over the long-term stability. Recently, we have seen a trend of passing laws in a hurry, without public debates and without a clear plan for their implementation. This looks like ticking boxes rather than empowering the country. True empowerment isn't found in the speed of adoption, but in the strength of implementation. We need transparent process because the laws that are being passed today are the ones we will have to live with tomorrow. I believe that empowering requires building consensus around values that unite rather than divide. My generation stands firmly for a civic, secular, and inclusive Montenegro because only such a state can offer us stability and opportunity. Our youth deserves a country that invests in the green transition and digital literacy, a country that prepares us to compete in Brussels or Berlin while giving us every reason to stay and build our lives in any city in Montenegro. This is why we insist on the quality of reforms, especially in chapters 23 and 24. These are not bureaucratic checkpoints. They are the foundation of our freedom. When corruption goes unpunished, the message to young people is clear. The system does not work. And when the system does not work, the only option seems to be leaving. This is how brain drain begins, and it is our greatest national challenge. We are not only losing workers, we are losing our future doctors, engineers, and leaders. To stop this, we do not need more promises. We need a system where the law applies equally to all. In conclusion, my message to our European partners is simple. Keep the criteria high, because the youth of Montenegro deserves nothing less than the highest European standards. We are not asking for shortcuts, we are asking for a country that truly belongs in the European Union. The young people we represent today are not passive observers. We are the voice of a modern, determined, and European Montenegro. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now to the second representative from Montenegro from our other sister party, DPS, and we already heard from her before, Kristina Šćepanović.
Thank you. You have a really good pronunciation of my last name. I'm, very proud. Yeah, all the last names. And I'm also very proud of my fellow colleagues from the Western Balkans, because we do have like a time that we need to speak, but we like to speak big words and big time in the Balkan region, but the clock is ticking, yes. I will just add a few things to dive in the political reality of Montenegro, even though we are a front runner. It's not only about checking boxes, that's what everyone said here, but let's maybe have a different look on behind the scenes and behind the picture of Montenegro's front-runner's place. We currently have a government that presents itself as a pro-European. We also have a parliament in which the majority adopts dozens of laws without thoroughly reviewing them, yet they too claim to represent a pro-European force. In reality, the only visible European element is the small EU flag displayed on parliamentary desks. Policies that the government of Montenegro is in fact pursuing, policies that are the policies that are undermining the country's European path. I come from a political party, Democratic Party of Socialists, that laid the foundations of Montenegro's European trajectory. We opened all the negotiation chapters with our coalition partners, provisionally closed some, and led the country into NATO despite periods of stagnation and enlargement fatigue. Throughout this process, we consistently contribute to the EU integration agenda. And what do we see today? Laws are being adopted without or even in contradiction to the opinions of the European Commission. Moreover, unconstitutional laws are being passed, particularly those that expand control over state coercive and security institutions. We are witnessing political actors who do not perceive the state in which they were born as their own, but instead view our neighboring country, Serbia, as their primarily national reference. And those are people in our parliament, the people that we are paying. The signals coming from the European Union, in fact, are clear. They want Montenegro as a member, but however, at what cost? Pro-Russian elements, primarily reflected in pro-Serbian parties currently in power, appear to have successfully concealed their true agenda. Notably, individuals from these parties, including high-ranking officials, such as the Speaker and the Deputy Speaker of the Parliament, as well as the members of our Montenegrin Parliament, have been declared persona non grata by Croatia. For these reasons, it is crucial that Montenegro undergoes a change in the government as soon as possible so that the state institutions can begin to function effectively and genuinely implement European values. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kristina. And now we go to our MEP responsible for Montenegro as our shadow, and that is Kostas Mavridis.
Thank you, Thijs. First of all, I'd like to emphasize that I'm very glad, not just to listen to you, but to be among young people from candidate countries and to listen to your views. After all, you are the future of Europe, and I'm very glad to say that you are already building on it. However, I need to be pragmatic and tell you what's going on within our group with regards to Montenegro and in general within the European Parliament. As a group, we have been a firm supporter of EU enlargement, which is a geopolitical necessity, as already stated by our president. Indeed, Montenegro is the most advanced candidate country in accessing EU, and I mean every single word I say. As European Parliament, we acknowledge Montenegro's steady progress on EU-related reforms, and we also support its ambitious timeline of closing all chapters by the end of this year. So far, though, 14 out of 33 negotiation chapters were provisionally closed, 2 in 2026. The closing of up to 9 additional chapters is being negotiated under the current Cyprus presidency, although seems to be quite ambitious. But just to follow on this line, just some hours ago, the Cyprus presidency announced the establishment of the ad hoc working party on the accession treaty on Montenegro, which marks a key step forward in the enlargement process. EU accession enjoys high rates of support among the Montenegrin people, and which is essential to this process. At the same time, though, I wish to underline that the accession process depends solely on the candidate country's fulfillment of the Copenhagen political criteria, which ensures commitment to our values, rule of law, democracy, and so on. Principles to which, as a group, we attach significant importance. Having said that, I will focus on what needs to be done by Montenegro for achieving the goal of accession. Progress remains still to be done for Montenegro, especially in judiciary, electoral reform, media freedom, and the fight against corruption. Reforms should not only be adopted, but also thoroughly implemented, as has already been noted. The speed of reforms should not come at the cost of involvement of civil society, including young people. Civil society and social partners' involvement is an important component of the accession efforts. The recent adoption of the amendments to the law on internal affairs and the law on the National Security Agency, despite strong criticism from the opposition and civil society and without proper consultation, raises legitimate concerns. These actors allege unconstitutional practices and believe that the adoption of these laws represents a serious step backward in the protection of human rights, legal certainty, and democratic oversight of the security in Montenegro. As a group, we sent a letter to the Commissioner Kos raising those concerns and asking the Commission to address this issue. Transparent procedures and genuine cooperation and consultation, notably on all laws pertaining to the EU integration process with all relevant stakeholders, including the opposition, legal experts, and the European Commission, should be in place. The electoral reform is a welcome development, and work can start now on fully implementing also all other outstanding recommendations, particularly in transparency of political party expenditures. In the area of judiciary, Montenegro still needs to demonstrate a credible record of final convictions for corruption cases and ensure the full effectiveness of judiciary. Strong media regulator needs also to be in place to ensure political independence. Regarding its foreign policy, we strongly commend Montenegro's full alignment with EU common foreign and security policy, including EU's restrictive measures and its active participation in EU missions and operations. However, as Montenegro gets closer to the EU, foreign malign interference will only intensify, and more needs to be done to ensure the resilience of the country against those activities. For concluding, my message is this. For successfully concluding the accession negotiations, political stability and constructive cross-party cooperation are needed. All political actors should maintain this momentum and intensify their efforts to bring about the necessary reforms. That includes also the young people, which should not be left out of this process. This year is critical for Montenegro to show that it can really be the 28th member state of EU in 2028, and it has our full support to achieve it and my personal commitment.
Thank you very much. I will, yes. Before I give over to Marta to chair further on, is everybody in the back also enthusiastic about this format with the young people? Yes? No, I love it. I agree with Kostas. I think it's really good to hear from all you. Marta.
It's great, and it's great to hear that Montenegro moves one step closer to EU membership. Thank you for good news. So I will continue from a while. You are going to understand why. We now turn to Ukraine. Natalia is joining us today from a country that is simultaneously defending itself against Russian aggression and advancing on the path to the European Union. Following a good election result in Hungary 10 days ago, we can also expect further progress. So I would like to give the floor, it's a pleasure to give the floor to Miss Natalia Starepravo. Is it correct, Thijs? S&D platform from Ukraine.
Thank you.
For Ukrainian youth, European Union enlargement is not just about politics, it's about our future, our safety, and the ability to plan our future in Ukraine. My generation is generation of war. We study under the sound of wounds and sirens. We work under Russian shelling. We learned very quickly what it means to grow up and the real price of freedom. Ukraine is already moving toward Europe's enacting laws step by step according to European standards. But this path is happening under very difficult conditions. The first and biggest challenge is war. The second is uncertainty. Young people need to understand if there will be a future in Ukraine. Today, millions of young people in Ukraine are abroad. They continue to live, and many of them may not to return. It's a huge loss of human potential for Ukraine. So another challenge are education and labor market. Young people are motivated to study and work, but they expect fair conditions, good salaries, and ability to grow. I also want to mention young veterans. In Ukraine, people from the age of 18 are fighting on front line. At this age, they should be studying at universities. They are returning with big experiences, but with trauma as well. That is why Ukraine is shaping a new approach. Not veterans should adapt to society, but society should adapt to veterans. And Europe should also be ready for this. There is another painful truth. The part of my generation has already died defending Ukraine's right to be part of Europe. Our expectations are very simple. Safety, a good standards of living, and the ability to plan a dignified future in Ukraine. In these conditions, the European Union is a good guide for us. But for this, young Ukrainians must be co-creators of changes. The SD platform is working to create opportunities for leadership of young people. We support youth in creating local organizations in their cities to participate in local government, to improve life of the other residents, their cities, people in needs. We also work on program for educators and veterans. But their real influence is still limited. We need more opportunities for youth to participate in governance, more non-formal education programs, more youth infrastructure in communities. So, in my hands, the result of SD platform. The SD platform in Ukraine has also created an analytical document. We call it a navigation. It identifies weaknesses in Ukraine and offers solutions in political, economic, and social areas. It is also a response to the demand of young people in Ukraine to be heard and to create the dignified future in Ukraine. So European Union enlargement is an opportunity for both sides. For Ukraine, it's a chance to be part of European Union society, rebuild the country, and keep its generation. For Europe, it's a chance to gain a Ukrainian generation that has already proven its commitment to European Union values. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalia. Thank you for your courageous example. And I will give the floor to Thijs Reuten, that is also SND Shadow Rapporteur on Ukraine, for his reaction, and this is why I was continuing.
Yeah, thank you very much. And for those of you who don't know, Natalia is from SD Platform, our partner, progressive partner in Ukraine, but we also have for many years already friends from SD Platform working with us. Andrei is there, Siramako, and we have had others, and it's very valuable. It's extremely good that we have you always with us as our advisors. I also have the responsibility as spokesperson on Ukraine for the SD group to sometimes say uncomfortable things. Yes, because we can talk about the membership, and we have to. We have to speed up that process. We have to unleash all creativity and not say that we have treaties and that we have rules. Yes, we have them. But they were written in different times and they were written for different circumstances. Now we have to find a solution that brings Ukraine into our family as soon as possible. But for that to happen, Ukraine needs to win this first. And that's an uncomfortable message because we bear a responsibility there as well. If we would have had half the bravery and half the courage of the brave Ukrainians defending not only their freedom but also our freedom for years, then we would have been a bit further now. Would we have done everything that we did in the past years already in the first year when we knew that it was necessary to do it? We would be a bit further now. We have to do more. And it was incredible what we achieved in 2025 because we compensated for the whole loss of support from the US, both financially and militarily. But we have to repeat it again and double the effort. Because as Kaja Kallas said, and I'm sorry again, it's an uncomfortable message, but we need to push Putin to want peace because it's not coming from within himself. We need to push him, and that only will happen when we raise the pressure and show that it is simply not going to happen, that we are going to rebuild Ukraine even while he is destroying it now, that we are going to give Ukraine the weapons it needs to fence off the aggression entirely. But then to the accession path, because that also, and I have to agree again with Kaja Kallas, we have to start telling the story together with all these Ukrainians that are living in our societies, in our villages, that have children in our schools, in our member states. We have to start telling the story to our citizens that the story of Ukraine is a story of Europe, that Ukraine will make us stronger as well, that we, especially when you look at security and defense industry, are at the point that we need Ukraine more than they need us. Financially, Ukraine still needs us. But we need to learn also from the Ukrainians, and we need to understand and realize that our bond, whether you love the Ukrainians or not, I do, but you don't have to. But our bond is unbreakable. Our destiny is shared. We have a shared destiny, and we will be stronger together. But for that to happen, we need also to understand the reality of today, and that is that we need to support Ukraine more than we are doing now and more forcefully. I will end with a positive note, because when Poland, a clear success story of enlargement, if you look at Poland today, almost becoming a net contributor to the European Union. When Poland entered the European Union, it was almost at the same level economically as Ukraine. Ukraine was actually a little bit better at the time. And now Poland has a GDP 5 times larger than Ukraine. That is the success that Putin is afraid of. He is afraid of a successful democratic country bordering his country. And he saw what it means. He saw in Poland what it means to be part of the European Union and to grow as the Polish people grew. That is our example. That is our future. Ukraine will be part of the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Thijs. Thank you so much for stressing that enlargement is a two-sides relationship. It's not only about imposing reforms and conditions, but it's also about supporting countries that are on the process, and we are trying to do that exactly today also. So now let us move from Moldova, which has made a lot of progress as a candidate country in the past year, which has been impressive by any measure, and it reflects a genuine political commitment to the European path at the highest level. And it is my pleasure to give the floor for a maximum of 5 minutes. I will continue to say that till the end, to Mr. Victor Prutino, Deputy Mayor of Chisinau, National Alternative Movement, Moldova. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It is really complicated to speak after the speeches of my colleagues from Ukraine. First of all, I would like to send a message of respect and gratitude for what you are doing, and that you are protecting us actually for the in face of the war in face of the Russian aggression. Going back to the topic of this event, you know, I've basically changed my speech for like God knows how many times during this event because, you know, unity through diversity. We share same issues. We share same problems. We face same challenges, and I will try to stick with the notes, but I'm not sure about that. I have other notes that I have here. You know, for Moldova, actually, for many Moldovans, Europe is not longer a distant dream, is not a geopolitical direction. Actually, Moldova, for many Moldovans, is already Europe because of the way we live, because of the way we travel, we study, we build our future. We share same aspirations, we share same values, and we increasingly share the same economic and social connections. That is why actually I believe that I will agree with my colleague Šćepanović. Is it right?
Pretty much.
Šćepanović. When you said that actually you don't bring the country to Europe, you bring Europe into the country. So I believe that we have to bring Europe in the Republic of Moldova and Europe in all the candidates countries that we are here represented. Because through good standards, through rule of law, transparency, strong institutions, and better living standards that we want to have at home. I can give you many examples implemented with the help of European Union in Chisinau, where the team I am part of is administrating the city. But that will be for a long time, and I have only 5 minutes. That's why I will say actually that European integration cannot be reduced only to slogans. It must remain a merit-based process, and I strongly support this idea. In Moldova, the year of 2028 has been presented last year in the elections by the ruling party as being the target for EU integration. Personally, I do not believe that's realistic. This accession have to depend on political deadlines or on the electoral narrative. It should depend whether we are truly ready to be in there. And we as a country and as people are continuing to work seriously to be ready for the moment. One of the biggest challenges Moldova faces today, beyond the impact of the Russian war against Ukraine, is the growing lack in public institutions. Public trust is eroding when European path is monopolized by only one party, which is ruling party in Moldova. When that happens, the mistakes that the government is making are no longer seen only as the mistakes of the politicians. They begin to affect how people perceive Europe itself. This is dangerous, especially for the young people, because disappointment in institutions can become disappointment in European idea itself. So, as I said, as it was said here by Mr. Nemetz, I think before, here is the house of democracy. Europe and the European Union must remain a guarantor of democratic standards, of rule of law and good governance in Moldova and in all the candidate countries. And Europe must never lower these standards, depending on who is in power. Trust, actually, in the European project can only be built through fairness, accountability, and real democratic values. And allow me to end this with a question while I still have this privilege to the rapporteur for the Republic of Moldova. In contexts such as the Republic of Moldova, how we can ensure that young people who usually think differently than the ruling parties are not perceived as adversaries and are not labeled for their different opinions, but are actually valued as contributors to a more resilient and an inclusive democracy. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The question was to our EP rapporteur on Moldova, and this is the opportunity to give the floor to Mr. Sven Mikser, our dearest colleague, MEP as rapporteur on Moldova, for his reaction, please.
Thank you very much. I hope to be able to get to the answer to the question by the end of my intervention. First of all, it's very impressive how Moldova has emerged in a relatively short time as one of the frontrunners among the candidate countries. In addition to being a frontrunner, obviously Moldova is also very much a frontline country when it comes to this sort of hybrid war between autocratic Russia and the democratic world. And also it is a country, obviously, that has been disproportionately affected by the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. And therefore, I believe that many in this House, but also beyond, took a huge sigh of relief when Moldovan people voted in or re-elected a pro-European president and also re-elected a pro-European majority to the parliament, and also enshrined in the constitution the principle of seeking European integration. So it was a big relief. I do believe that the authorities in Moldova are genuinely committed, and that has been, I think, explicated by the success of the reform effort over the past year or past years. So it's truly one of the positive, one of the success stories. But obviously, as has been said several times today, the window of opportunity is only going to be open for so long, and the road ahead is not without challenges. First of all, I think it is important that these reform efforts achieve not only a sort of more competitive economy for the country in some distant future on the horizon, but also some very tangible benefits for the people tomorrow. That's critically important. And secondly, I think it's also important that we on the European Union side live up to our end of the bargain. It's totally unacceptable if one of the EU institutions basically makes an assessment that the country is ready to advance to the next level, to open formally clusters in negotiations, and then another institution basically does not act upon that advice. That's totally unacceptable, and that is bound to create some frustration, some sort of disappointment, unless we can resolve it. Even though Moldova was successfully repelled these Russian attempts to interfere in its democratic processes, it doesn't mean that Russia has been defeated or has capitulated. I think it was very much explicated by the statement by Shoigu the other day when he said, or when he spoke about these imaginary grievances of the Russian-speaking people living in Transnistria. I think it means that it was really reminiscent of the language that the Russian leaders used ahead of the aggression, the full-scale war on Ukraine. So we must stay alert, and obviously Moldovans must stay alert. And also, I think that Europe is obviously a union of democracies, and one of the attributes of democracy is political pluralism. That means that this sort of pro-European values or European values or pro-European stance does not is not a monopoly of any political party, and it also means that our support for the country's aspirations does not belong to any political party. Obviously, we engage with the country, the legitimate authorities, the powers that are, or the political forces that are in power at that given moment, but our support actually belongs to the legitimate aspirations of the people. And as I said, Moldova has been disproportionately affected by the Russian war on Ukraine. There are many socioeconomic problems, and the economic growth has been anemic. And there is a sort of trend of people punishing the sitting government for their everyday worries and grievances, even if these problems are in big part caused by external factors. And there must be an outlet. It must be possible for those people who are critical of the policies of the government to actually express these grievances while being recognized as being pro-European. We know that there are forces that are genuinely pro-Russian. They represent the minority of Moldovans. But it must be possible for people to be critical of the government while being genuinely pro-European. It's also important because in democracies, parties in power actually tend to change, and that's also a normal attribute of democracy. And we cannot basically be in a situation whereby we have to keep having a single party in power indefinitely, because any alternative would mean a change of the geopolitical course in the country. So I think this moral has to be taken into account.
Thank you, Sven. And we are at the last candidate country. Yes. And the final candidate country is Georgia, where the situation remains difficult. We already heard about it from one of our guests, also asking a question to Kaja Kallas on Georgia, with, I think, an important answer that she gave. We still also see the unwavering commitment of the Georgians in now about 550 days or something. We are now of continuous protest. So I first will give the floor again to Alexander Menabde. We heard him asking a question to Kaja Kallas, and he's from the political party For Georgia. Alexander.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, distinguished guests, and fellow Europeans, I stand and I'm sitting in front of you today not only as a representative of the For Georgia party, but also as a voice of a generation of Georgians who've made Europe their dream, sacrificed for it, and repeated over and over again that the Georgian path is European and European only. I'm humbled and honored to be one of the first students who's gained education in Europe thanks to visa liberalization that was developed and achieved back in 2017. And it clearly shows that this is the single most powerful tool that Europe holds against anti-Western propaganda that is currently dominated in Georgia. When a young Georgian can travel freely, work in Paris, study in Berlin, or gain professional experience in Stockholm, or build professional experience in Stockholm, no ruling regime's lies about Europe can take root. It's actually a living proof that Europe values Georgian youth. And as long as that hope, and as long as that door remains open, that hope remains stronger than fear. However, it is actually this exact fear that is currently dominated in Georgia. The ruling regimes is actively dismantling educational standards, silence indecent, and imprisoning young people for daring to stand in the streets and demand democracy. Young Georgians already work outside their fields, not because of their choice, but because the poverty leaves no alternatives, because their fields offer no prospects in Georgia. And they still stand in the streets and fight against the anti-Western regime while they are beaten, tortured, humiliated by police force, and yet they still stand firm, waving the EU flag. Politicians are either in prison or are in exile. Our party leader, former Prime Minister García, was attacked twice last year, and no investigation has been conducted. This is actually the very Prime Minister under whose leadership Georgia was the front runner in EU accession talks. We embrace this fight using every platform at our disposal to fight against the Russian propaganda and fight for the Georgian future. I was one of the lucky ones who ran for the mayor as the youngest candidate in the recent local elections. That was anything but transparent, was polarized, and was boycotted by the power of the opposition. And it has to be noted that I'm not the only one. Young Georgians run for election so they can shape the very future they've been fighting for, both physically and intellectually. Europe must also stand honest with itself. The support provided to Georgia so far hasn't been enough. Georgia stands at a civilizational crossroad, facing Russian hybrid warfare that's cloaked under the guise of neutrality, and a corrupt oligarchic elite that howls out democratic institutions. The warning signs of a true gray zone are already visible, and it's not a distant risk, but a present reality. And it has to be noted that, unfortunately, the response from European institutions have been far too slow, far too cautious, and far too conditional. And for Georgia's vision is to build on democratic social values, the values that define what it means to be a socialist and a European. We believe in a nation where young people don't have to choose between their future and their homeland. We believe in a nation where a lawyer defends people's rights, where an engineer builds bridges, and where a teacher shapes the next generation. That is why our path is to work and fight against autocracy while working on social issues that daily affect Georgians. This nation isn't a peripheral footnote in the European project, rather a strategically vital country on the eastern frontier. A nation with a proud civilization that stretches back millennia, and its people whose majority has consistently, repeatedly, and passionately chosen the European path. The EU must match that courage with more and serious consequences for those who undermine democracy. It's not a charity, it's an investment in Europe's own security and values. The young people of Georgia have not given up on Europe, so don't give up on them. The question is not Georgia belongs in the European family. It does. The question is whether their dream is abandoned. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexander. And now I give the floor to my colleague and dear friend Tobias Kramer, who is the shadow rapporteur on Georgia.
Thank you very much, Thijs, and really thank you, Alexander. I think this was a very inspiring message and one of courage and of hope. And I think especially when we are dealing with the current Georgian regime, it's exactly inspiration and hope that we need. Because I'll be entirely honest, if you otherwise just look at Georgia from the outside, and we have been in Georgia recently as S&D, and we've seen the situation there, it is incredibly depressing what Georgian dream is doing to this beautiful country. Georgia was the front runner. It was one of the beacon of hopes on the Caucasus for exactly the generation that you represent, for really this Georgian dream of Europe, not the Georgian nightmare that is currently in government. And since then, this regime has shown its real face, that it is not a Georgian dream, that it is a nightmare under the shadow of the Kremlin. We see in Georgia, to the letter, the playing out of the Russian playbook of disinformation, of manipulation, of intimidation. And we must not be naive, and I'm glad that you raised that. This isn't just about Georgia in Georgia. This is Georgian dream doing for Moscow what Moscow wants to do in our democracies. It's the training ground for disinformation and manipulation that we can see all over Europe and that we've seen also in other countries. And this is why it is so important to recognize the strength that Georgia still has. Georgian dream, I think we can now say very clearly, has given up all pretenses. They've given up all pretenses of trying to be European. And actually, I'd almost like them to be very honest to their citizens that what they are doing is in no way trying to become European. What they are doing is selling their country to Russia. And we see it very directly also in the way that not only they fight against their own population, including with banned chemical substances, but also by really giving Russia ground, undermining sanctions, doing everything what Russia does. So they have given up on Europe. But it is all the more important that Europe therefore doesn't give up on Georgians. And I fully agree with you, the European Union has not been able to do what is necessary. But I am hopeful. I'm hopeful not only because over 500 days Georgians have been on the streets and have given us courage, but I'm also hopeful if you look to countries like Hungary. I'm hopeful very directly because Hungary has been very often the country blocking real and targeted sanctions against people like Ivanishvili and his people. But I'm also encouraged because Hungary shows that if there is a strong population, if there's a strong movement for Europe, even the most attempts to undermine the rule of law, even the most blatant attempts to sell yourself and your government to Russia, does not mean that the people themselves lose their courage and lose their ability to change things. I really hope it's not going to take 16 years. I hope it's much faster than that. But I think we must all know we are not giving up on Georgia. The road to Europe, the road to freedom remains open. But for that, Europe needs to start acting. Europe needs to get its act together. We have to do that. And at the same time, I really look forward to your generation taking charge in Georgia, bringing together a unified opposition and showing those people in Georgian Dream that they are not Georgia. Real Georgia is Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Tobias. Look, dear friends, I really need your cooperation now because we have to leave this room exactly at 6:30. So I have time for one very short intervention of our dear colleague, Juan Fernando López Aguilar. And then we will hear again from Kristina. And finally, the closing remarks from Kathleen here also from the podium. First, very briefly, Juan Fernando.
Briefly enough, thank you, Thijs Reuten, and thank you all. I can only salute and commend this gathering of us S&D Willy Brandt program for EU enlargement. And of course, the testimonies we heard from the young generations of nothing less than the 9 candidates for membership, and Kosovo, which is still pending on the to be in the waiting list. But the message is that certainly you are doing your homework, but we are also committed to do ours, meaning that we have to care about accommodating institutions, including this European Parliament, not only to have you on board with a fair representation, but also as to your expectations, meaning that the EU has to change also when it comes to its financial commitment to regional cohesion, to a social pillar, to solidarity in every possible way. And the final message is that certainly you must be aware that we S&D, we are identified with the reason to be of the European Union, which is not, of course, just having a wide single market, but most importantly to be bound by law based on values and commitment to human rights and fundamental rights, which is the binding message even for the foreign policy of external action and security and defense. They're all compelled by the mandate to respect international law, including human rights and humanitarian law. So that is a message to let you know that you are doing your homework, we gotta do ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Juan Fernando. And as I said, 6:30, we have to be out. We can still talk on the corridor, we can hug, we can discuss, but we need to clear this room at 6:30, but not before we have heard again from Kristina, who speaks a little bit also, I would say, on behalf of all the youth representatives that we have heard from in the different segments. So please give your final comments on what you've heard today, and the floor is yours. Kristina.
Thank you so much. Well, I did prepare a speech, but I will not read it, okay? So be relaxed. I will be brief because we've all heard a lot of messages today, and it is essential that we talk and that we speak honestly with all of our more experienced colleagues. I will not say older, I will say more experienced colleagues, and we can learn a lot from them. And that intergenerational cooperation is very, very, very needed in these times. But I think when I get back to my country from these kind of conferences and these kind of forums, whether it's from organized events from S&D groups or as organized events from Young European Socialists, which is a huge political family of all of our youth wings parties. I get more motivated to help my country, and I'm sure that it is the same case to everyone here. I get more motivated to actually do the work and not only speak at these conferences, as most of our citizens think that we do. But in the end, it is very important that we share ideas, that we implement good practices from each candidate countries, and in the end, that we are willing to change ourselves for a better society and for a better country. I would conclude on that, and I would thank the organizers and everyone who made this conference possible, our moderators, our MEPs who were willing to sit and listen to us. Thank you so much all, and I hope that I will not say see you next time, I will say see you in the European Union.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kristina Šćepanović. And also, as a motivational fun fact or interesting fact, 450 people are attending the conference online. And motivation and energy is important because there are so many people out there who would like to see us fail. They would like to see us fail. So we have to encourage each other, help each other, inspire each other. And for that, we also turn to our Vice President, especially tasked with enlargement, for the final closing remarks of this conference, Kathleen van Bremt.
Thank you so much, Tess. And I can reassure you, I didn't even begin to prepare a speech. So there's no speech. It is also, it's not possible to make conclusions or wrap up. That is completely impossible. But let me give you a few of my feelings and maybe also a message. First of all, the feeling I have right now, Tess and Marta, is proud. Very proud. I'm very, very, very proud. Of course, I'm proud of Tess and Marta, who were excellent moderators. I'm very proud of all the team of the S&D Secretariat, because without them, this is just not possible. And it is an excellent team, very, very dedicated. I'm always proud, they know that. I tell that all the time, of the rapporteurs and shadow rapporteurs in my team. But it is absolutely true. There's no other political group in this parliament that has so dedicated, well-informed, engaged, hard-working rapporteurs and shadow rapporteurs on all these enlarging countries, absolutely. We have a little issue, I have to say, with the gender balance, but something for the future to look at. But it is important because if you want to move this process forward, we need all of you to be there and to push. But of course, my proud today goes to you. The young people of these enlarging countries. When we pitched the idea, we had already the first in the new Willy Brandt, which was last year, was also an excellent conference, but let me be a little bit frank. We have very, very good party leaders in all of these countries. Most of them are male and old. Nothing against that, nobody takes that as an offense, but I think, and many of you mentioned that, you are the future. Kaja Kallas said it also very nicely. We are doing all of this mainly for your future, because our future is shorter. We do it mainly for your future. But I'm so proud because it's a little bit of a risk, you know. These young people, the first steps into politics, this and that. But I have all the confidence. What I've seen today in your engagement, in your speech, in how you bring it, in the complexity, and also the values of social democracy, it was so vibrant and present that that made me extremely proud. And it gives us confidence because it's, you know, in politics you have all these rules and you have treaties and you have Copenhagen criteria and all of that. But at the end, only people, humans, men and women, will make the difference. And I see today a generation that is capable of doing that. And what I thought when I was sitting there listening to you, I had to think about the Brexit. I don't often cry, well, I do actually, but mostly with stupid movies. But but in politics, I tend not to, because women crying in politics, then they start saying she's so emotional. But I did cry with the Brexit, the day when it happened, but also the day they actually left. It's still a huge scarf in the history of the European Union. And we all know that the young generation didn't want that the young generation in the UK didn't want to leave. It were the old people, conservative old people, that made this happen. So it's an extra good reason to give the enlargement and everything that needs to be done also into your hands. 3 more minutes? Two. Okay. You see who's the boss here? Unity. That's something that I heard of almost all of you in different forms. Sometimes unity amongst the progressive, absolutely. Unity here amongst progressives in the enlarging and the European countries. But also unity when it comes to take difficult decisions. And I know in Serbia, in Georgia, dealing or not dealing with elections. But in Serbia, it's something that will come up soon, and there are different approaches to all of that. No matter what, it is extremely important that in these countries we can go back to democracies, because only when democracies are back in these countries, enlargement with these countries like Serbia and Georgia will actually happen. My last message is the message to us within the European Union. Juan Fernando mentioned it, and I think it is important. We have a huge responsibility, and we have to take it. And the S&D group is a group that is very much in favor of enlargement, but also in my group, I see some cold feet. And I don't want to see any cold feet, because if Social Democrats start doubting on Ukraine, on Serbia, in support, on getting the first countries in, then we're more or less lost. So the responsibility of this S&D group today is huge. And again, the rapporteurs will do their job, but it's also all the delegations within the S&D that needs to stand ready to take difficult decisions. And that means take leadership, political leadership in your countries to make sure that your public opinion is on board. You're tired, huh?
Well, if you say these things, you can have an extra minute. Eh?
No. I'm gonna wrap up. But I forgot to thank one more part of this conference, and that is, of course, you. You've been here for more than 3 hours, listening, applauding, and I hope also being energized. Again, it's people's work. And the fact that more than 400 people are watching online, the fact that we had just an excellent event in Barcelona, where we also united social democracy and progressives. And that should be a beacon of hope. You today were a beacon of hope. This conference is a beacon of hope. And hope and vision is what we need in these dire times. And we can do that. Thank you very much, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you. Talk outside. Thank you very much.